All right, in this video we're going to be talking about percent proportions, finding percents of numbers, which can be a little intimidating at first, but if you know how to set up the proportion, or if you know how to translate the math, it's actually really easy. So here are three ways that you could see it. Find a part, given a percent in the whole. What is 40% of 75? I'm going to show you how to set that up. Find a percent given the whole and a part. What percent of 50 is 20? And see the math set up algebraically below. If it doesn't make sense, don't worry, we're going to make sure you understand it by the end of this video. And lastly, find a whole given a percent and a part. We're going to start off writing a proportion to find a percent of a number. How to write a proportion? Write the first ratio. The percent will change into a fraction with 100 as the denominator. So percent means out of 100. Always means out of 100. Now, usually on a test, you might have X amount of questions. That grade you get is usually the percent out of 100. You can score higher than 100 if your teacher were to give you extra credit. But again, 100% is the highest you usually can get. Percent means out of 100. So if you look at number 2, write the second ratio. So the information that's given. So the dollar amount will be the denominator and the n will be the numerator. Solve using cross products, and we've talked about how to solve using cross products in the previous video. Now, when we're doing a percent problem, again, percent, get this, means out of 100, so we're always going to solve all of it. Percent over 100. And then two ways we're going to do this is, and you're going to see why, over of, or percent over 100. I'm going to draw a little line here to separate these. And part over total. Okay, so again, there's two ways we can set up a proportion: percent over 100, and then if they, depending upon how they give us the information, it's going to be is over of, and that's an S at 15, is over of, or percent over 100 and part over total. We'll set up the proportion and solve it. So let's just say they wanted to find 40% of 63. I want to find 40% of 63. Now this is where that is over of comes in handy. Now what information did they give us? They gave us the 40%. So it's 40 over 100. Why is it over 100? Because percent is always out of 100. So it's 40 out of 100. I can simplify it, but I'm going to leave it alone. And is over of. So the 63, does it go on the top or the bottom? So of 63, of is on the bottom, as you recall. Is over of, so 63, and then I'm going to write my variable. Now, it doesn't matter which variable you use. No, it does not. X is the most common, so then we're going to cross multiply. 100x, and 40 times 63 is 2,520. Now, the inverse of that, divide by 100, because I need to isolate the variable. That gives me 1. Divide this by 100. So x equals 25 and 2/10. That is my answer. Now, so we want to check to make sure it seems reasonable. So notice our numerator here, 40, is less than half of 100. So I need to make sure we solved it, that this is less than half of 63. So half of 63 would be 31 and a half. This is slightly less than 31 and a half. That's 40 slightly less than 50. So that answer seems reasonable. Always when you have an answer, especially solving proportions, just to make sure we put the place value, the decimal in the correct place value, and then we set up everything and we did the math correct. Just check, make sure it's reasonable. That definitely seems right. Okay, so we had 40% of 63. We set it up. Percent over 100 is over of, and then we solved it. Okay. Let's look at the problem they did. Find 40% of 75. So let's look at the way they solved it. And they kind of set it up the same way. Percent over 100 is over of, 75, cross multiply. They set up the same way. Let's see. What percent of 50 is 20? Let's work on that problem. What percent, so we don't know our percent of 50 is 20, and then a question mark. Of course, I'm going to run out of room. Okay, what percent of 50 is 20? So we're going to go back. How do we set this up? We know percent is out over 100, and we know is over of, part over total. So what percent? I don't know my percent, but I do know. Okay, so what percent of 50 is 20? So x over 100, because I don't know my percent, is over of, so 20 over 50. All right, all right, all right. Okay, so on this one we can cross multiply. I get x times 50 is 50x. 100 times 20 is 2,000. So x equals 40. Great. Now, you might ask, isn't there, so 40%. Then there easier way to solve that. There would have been, how do I go from 50 to 100 times 2? Whatever you do the bottom, you do the top, and 20 times 2 is 40. So 40 over 100, which is 40%. So again, this proportion, we didn't know a percent. Again, we did know is over of. So set it up with the information given, and then solve it using cross products, or in this one, you could use the property of 1. What if we said, what is 15% of 32? Let's make that, okay, that's good enough. So 15 for 100 is over of, cross multiply. Isolate the variable, I'm multiplying by 100, divide by 100, divide by 100. You get x equals 5 1/4 or 5.25. So does that seem reasonable? This is more than 6 times less than 100. This obviously will be less than that. So 5 1/4, that seems reasonable. 5 1/4 times 6 get you close to 32. 15 times 6 will get you close to 100, gets you into 90. Okay, so that seems reasonable. All right, we can set them up algebraically. So we have to know what words mean. So notice, what is 40% of 75? So if we don't set them up with the proportion, we need to know how to translate. So what is a variable? If I see the word what, that means it's an unknown quantity, so I'm going to use a variable. When I see the word is means equals. Is to be, I am something, that means I am equivalent to, I am equal to something. If I make that claim in math, when I said is, it means it's equal to something. Now 40% is easy, 40%. Now one thing you have to realize, you cannot multiply by percent. So you have to turn that percent into a decimal. So 40% is 4/10 or 40/100. Of next to a number means to multiply. Notice the multiplication symbol. Now, usually in middle school math we don't use an x for multiplication because we're using x a lot of times for a variable, but this example they did. And then of 75, so we're going to multiply 75. So what is 40% of 75? So let's do that problem again. 40% of 75. So if I were to solve it algebraically, 40% of 75 is 30. If we set it up as a proportion, 40% is over of. If we cross multiplied, we're still going to get 30. So Mr. Hewlett, which way is better? Well, it depends upon whatever you feel more comfortable with. Now, technically, should you know both ways? Heck yeah, you should. But if you feel more comfortable with one way or the other, that's fine. Let's look at this one. What percent of 50 is 20? So we don't know a percent of 50 is 20. So let's go to this. What percent of 50 is 20? Let's set it up algebraically. What percent of 50 is 20? So what am I doing? Okay, so again, percent, it's unknown, so it's a variable. Of means multiply, so I have the parentheses around next to a number, or a variable means to multiply. Is, I have the equal sign, and then 20. Okay, so isolate the variable. I'm multiplying by 50. It's the inverse or opposite. Dividing by 50 cancels out because 1 times x is x. Whatever you do to the left side, you do to the right side. And 20 over 50 is 0.4. As a percent, that would be 40%. Let's see if we got that right. Set up to proportion. I don't know my percent. I know it's over 100. Is over of times 2 times 2, and you still get 40. So x equals 40%. Now this one was 0.4. That's a decimal equivalent. Again, turn it into percent. Percent means out of 100, so we move the decimal 2 places to the right, so we get 40, so 40%. Let's look at the last one. Find a whole given a percent and a part. And again, if you look on this page, part over total. So what do we have? 35 of what number is 70? So we have 35% of a number is 70. That's an is. Sorry, not good with my S's. Okay, here we go. So I can't multiply by percent. Let's set it up algebraically first. So 35%. So 35% is 35 over 100. As a decimal, it's 35 hundredths. Of next to a number means to multiply. Or so multiplying by a variable is equals 70. So divide by 0.35. Divide by. So 70 divided by 0.35 is 200. Now notice, if you're dividing by a number less than 1, which I'm dividing by 0.35, 35 hundredths, our quotient became larger than our original number. So again, if you're dividing by a number less than 1, your quotient is going to be bigger than your original number. Let's set up the proportion. Percent means out of 100 is part over total. I don't know my total. Okay, that's part of it, but I don't know how much. Times 2 times 2 And 100 times 2 is still 200, so that is our answer. So we have just worked on finding percent of a number, either by setting up proportions or setting it up algebraically. I hope this has helped, and if you need any more help or problems or other videos, just email me and I can help you out. jhewlett@leisd.ws. Thanks.